initially you guys were thinking you were going to do a singer-songwriter record because you had enough songs to do that.
Right.
You got to do that. But then you also had, if I understand correctly, this like handful of really strong worship songs, or at
Right.
least a few finished ones and some great half songs that you wanted to finish out.
Right.
So what made you decide to do the worship record?
Well, what happened was this. Yeah, you set it up great. But what happened was Mark, my publisher. I'm with Simpleville's is the name of this company that I work for it, and Mark, my publisher, he had approached me. Well, I had gone to him maybe a year and a half ago. I'd done this concert. I had, I've got these, few fans who occasionally will call me and say, come do a concert. And I did a little concert, and I was playing songs at the concert, and I realized as I'm kind of right in the middle of it, and you're kind of, your mind's sort of going on autopilot. I was thinking, I'm doing 5 or 6 of these songs, and these are all songs that are 4 or 5 years old. I'm not doing any songs I've written recently, and I wondered why, and I realized, well, that's because I'm not writing songs anymore. Since I've started writing for other artists and sort of for commercial purposes and all that, I've stopped writing songs that I really want to lead or play for people. And these were more performance-y, singer-songwriter type songs. And so I went to Mark and I told him that story, and I said, I need to, because the way my relationship with him works, I turn in songs and they're supposed to be commercially viable and all that, and it's just different. I mean, this isn't any sort of strike at the Christian music business, but they're not. There's a certain kind of format, as everyone knows, good or bad, for what is successful in popular Christian music. And when I write Unbound for my fans and for me, it's just not like that. So I said to him, hey, can I keep writing that sort of stuff? Is that going to bug you? And he said, no, actually, I would love to hear more of that. He said there were lots of reasons why you need to keep doing that, and not the least of which is you just need to survive. Sort of, that's good therapy and all that, right? So I started writing more of that stuff about a year ago and compiled a group of songs. And somewhere in there, he approached me, Mark, came back again and said, listen, this isn't really what you do for us, but you need to make a record of these songs. These are good, and you need to focus on this kind of writing, and this could be really helpful for your career and for us as a publishing company. And so I was super encouraged because I'd never had any kind of gatekeepers. Here I am after all these years trying to I stopped trying to get commercial success with my own writing, started trying to write commercially, and here's a guy who's sort of commercially, he's a part of that institution in a good way, comes to me and says, hey, I like what you're doing, this non-commercial stuff. So it was very encouraging to me, and so I got really energized, and so I started writing that stuff. Well, anyway, he had in his mind a certain timeline for when he thought that record could come out, and I just wasn't. I had a pile of what we thought were keepers, but not enough. And I just kind of burning myself out. This was like over the Christmas holidays that we kind of came to this conclusion that I was working every day trying to write and really working harder than I think writers should have to write sometimes, should have to work sometimes. There should be some natural. There's of course work, but there's some natural. And I was just working too hard to write smart things or whatever, And even sort of saying, what would Ross King say, which is terribly awful and narcissistic and just awful, right? Mm-hmm. So I told him, I don't know that I'm ready. And at the same time, you were doing your record, and I had 4 songs on your record, 5, I think. I had, The Village came out with a record that I had written a song with them. A guy named Wes Taylor is an independent guy. I had a record I had written 3 songs or 4 songs with him. So between all those records, there were like 8 or 9 songs that I loved. They were worship songs, all worship songs. And I had a handful of songs I was leading that I had written, and thought, well, those will be a worship record at some point. And so anyway, I just went to Mark and said, wait a second, I've got I'm listening to 9 songs that I didn't even think about tracking that are on other people's records. They're good. They're cuts on other people's records, and I haven't even cut them. What if we did that instead? And so then he and I just started sifting through my catalog, and I had like 20 songs that we both thought were contenders for a worship record. So it was great because I've never had any kind of, I've never sought any kind of gatekeeping, any kind of help in that, really, my wife and a few friends. But it was cool to have, to be sort of humbled by, hey, you need to go to other people and see what songs you have that are worthwhile and that should be played and whatever. And of course, it was super energizing to hear your versions of songs that we'd written and Wes's versions and the Village, and whatever else. That was just so energizing to me. So, so at that point, Mark, who I think honestly was more excited about a singer-songwriter thing, because it sort of felt like his kind of favorite version of street cred, for me would be kind of this folky singer-songwriter guy, prophet sort of thing. And so I think he was sort of, oh, worship record, that's cool, because he's like us. He's hearing a lot of worship records and thinking, is this really art that's being made a lot of the time, Not to say that it's not. It's just sometimes it isn't quite as much. So all that to say, he got really excited when he started thinking in that vein, hey, let's listen to these songs as potential cuts for his record. And next thing you know, I had, I'm filing down songs. Whereas the singer-songwriter record, I was trying to build 6 or 8 for an EP. Here I had 20. I had to file down to 10 or 12. So it was really, really fun and really cool.
All right, so let's talk about this new record. So this is, I'll go ahead and say I've heard 3 or 4 very early versions of the songs.
You and nobody else, buddy.
I know.
You and my wife, and that's it.
So they're very good. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You know that they're good. But
I hope so.
This record, and this is the reason why I wanted to use whatever resources I had to share it, this record is a whole new thing for you in a lot of different ways.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't you talk about some of the new things about this record that you're doing that you've never really done before?
Sure. I've only had a real producer on probably one record, and I say producers, probably producers, but I really, on All the Decorations 2 in 2002, I really gave the reins primarily to David Parker and a guy named Stephen Manuel, and they kind of it was at David's studio in Dallas Fort Worth, and so he was engineering the whole thing, and I just bought my studio gear here in College Station, and so I was doing. So I let David really push me on probably, I don't know, at least half the songs. Stephen did another third or half, but that was 11. That's 11 years ago, and of course that record, I should have noticed this, but it's still my highest seller to this day. So you'd think I would have caught something there, but it also was my most expensive by a good amount. And I think my decisions since then have probably been as much about finances as they have been about art, with probably a little bit of pride in there too, But I
just a little bit,
I think I just wanted to be awesome at this, and so. But anyway, so I've done half a dozen records of some kind since then, and produced them either all myself or with the band I'm working with, And not to minimize that, because there's always been lots of help, and you know this from doing a couple of records that. There's a producer, and then there's the guys in the room are just sometimes coming up with just genius stuff that nobody thought of, except the drummer or the bassist or something, right? So anyway, producer, a guy named John Steingard. He's the lead singer and guitarist for Hawk Nelson, which is a band on my publisher is sort of tied to a record label, and he's on that record label.
So the interesting thing about this is if a man had showed up in a time machine 3 years ago to me and said, hey, in 3 years, Ross is going to make a record with a guy from Hawk Nelson.
John is just, he's just really, really gifted. And this was, he and I, the short version of that is that he and I wrote a couple of times in my co-writes, because he's with my company, and just had a blast. I mean, we wrote a song that we pitched for his album, for his band's record, and it didn't make the record for a number of reasons, but we both loved it. And then we wrote another song. We wrote a worship song together that honestly I haven't finished, but we just had a great experience both times.
You've said, I mean, you really feel a privilege that you're getting to work with John now.
Right.
You really feel like he's destined for some really amazing things.
I think so. I mean, everything he sent me, I told you this, I think recently, everything he sent me is like my new favorite thing he sent me.
Because y'all are, so let me just explain to folks.
Sorry.
So a few weeks ago, a month ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You guys did what a lot of us are doing now when we make records. You do a couple of days tracking drums and bass with some just basic acoustic and vocals,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and then you and John are working.
Yep. He's in Nashville, and I'm back here in College Station.
But he's also touring now the new record. So you guys.
So he's got enough going on. So what's
Right.
happening is he's taking, and I should say, I mean, he's producing. In case I haven't used that word yet, he's really being a producer in this way, and that doesn't mean that, I don't say anything or that no one else speaks into the process. It just means, he very much lets the weight of it be on his shoulders. And initially, I just wanted him to maybe play, but the more we talked, the more I liked what he had to say. So, but no, he's going back and he's putting electric guitars, some programming, whatever. And I'm doing back here final acoustics, vocals. I'm doing percussion, little things, shaking tambourines and shakers, and I've done some piano work, MIDI piano. I'll play a piano part and then send him the MIDI, and he fiddles with it a little bit, and so it allows me to do as much as I can do for free, that I feel confident about, and then let him do and other people do the stuff that I don't want to,
So let's tell people. So when this airs, you'll be sort of launching something really cool leading up to the record. So let's take some time and tell people what exactly you're doing, how they can get ready for the record.
Well, like most people these days, I've realized, most artists and musicians, I've realized that people don't pay for music the way that they used to. So, there's the whole Kickstarter craze, and I know you did it and found it to be successful for you. And I just didn't. Kickstarter seemed like a lot of work to me in terms of all the perks and all that, and I've never been really good at engaging fans in that way, which is why I've loved songwriting for commercial purposes versus being an artist. So I didn't want to do the Kickstarter thing in the traditional sense, but I do, like a lot of people, need to raise funds for the record. So I'm about halfway funded with money that I just had, that I saved up or whatever from years of doing records and all that. And I've got about another half that I need to come up with. So what I'm doing, and this is all, now that I'm gonna say it on the internet, I guess I have to do it. But I'm gonna make this next week. I'm gonna compile a set of songs that are sort of B-sides and unused things. There was a kids record I did a couple years ago, and at the last minute I decided to kind of make it a non-religious, non-spiritual record, just to sort of see if I could get it into the hands of some folks who wouldn't normally buy Christian music, just sort of through their kids and all that. And so I had a pile of songs that I didn't use for that record that were very Jesus, God-centered songs for kids. And I've written some more of those in the last couple of years since my kids have been getting into homeschooling and all that. We've been doing stuff kind of for learning purposes and all that. So I've got a pile of kids songs, maybe 5 or 6 there. And then I have a pile of songs that I've written, sort of either songs that I've written trying to pitch, in my new life of doing this, that didn't land but I really liked, and a pile of songs that I wrote in the interim between, after perhaps I said too much, but before this last round of writing, that I just wrote and felt like, man, these are me exploring new ideas and new ways of writing and all that, but they're not going to land on my record. And I believe in them. I mean, they're not just cast-offs, but they're songs that I believe in. So there'll probably be 2 little sort of pay-what-you-want EPs I'm going to put out, just like, me on the acoustic, shake a tambourine, maybe a little programming or piano or something, and I'll just probably put out, hey, here's 6 kids songs, pay what you want. This will help fund my record, and there'll be like a zip file or something where you just buy them all, and pay, $1 or $20 or whatever you think, that you want to do to help support the record. And then a second one that'll be singer-songwriter stuff that I believe in, but just probably won't make my singer-songwriter album. And there may be some other stuff in those 2 piles that I'm not thinking of yet, because there's just so many songs. I mean, as you know from the last couple of years, I've just been writing so much that there's just a lot of songs, and a lot of them are never going to see the light of day. And I don't necessarily want to put them on a record and say, hey, pay $10 for this, because they're just random or they or whatever. And so, but they are songs I believe in, and I think my true fans will be really excited about them, because they're things that are definitely, in the style of my past records and that sort of thing.
So the best way people can do that is just probably follow you on Twitter. You'll probably use
Sure.
Twitter and Facebook to put
I've got a newsletter on my website that you can sign up for, and I'm going to probably that's going to be kind of my A team of info. They'll get everything first. So you go to my website, roskimusic.com, and there's a newsletter you can sign up for. And then after those two things are done, I'll do a pre-order. And it'll just be a classic, probably pre-order where I say, order now for this amount, and you'll get the download as soon as it's mastered, and then you'll get a hard copy when that comes out.
Well, I'm excited for the record. I think that the record will, as I've heard you talk about it and kind of heard, secondhand the things that John has said about it as producer. Mm-hmm. It does feel like the record has kind of come alive in ways that you guys weren't even expecting. So I think number one, there'll be some satisfaction with the record. I think that just personally and spiritually, you guys will be very, very satisfied with it. But I do think it also has a lot of potential. And I think the co-writing you've done has made you such a strong writer, even when it comes to worship. And I think this is probably the closest you've landed to, that balanced way of writing these songs. So I'm excited. I certainly want people to check it out. You do have an album title, is that right, or have you decided?
I think so, and this comes from a lyric that actually I think you wrote. There's a song on the record that we wrote together called "Hallelujah for the Cross," which I'm really, really super excited about. It's a hymn-style song that, after the record's out, you and I can do another one of these to talk about our co-writes. But I loved how this one came together, and it just had, you and I probably met 3 or 4 times over Skype, and it came together in all these different pieces, and it's just a super alive song that it just, it's exciting. But anyway, what was the question? I got so excited about the song. Title, right. You sent in some lyrics. We wrote that song. We started on that song, and we think we sat together on the internet and wrote one verse. Mm-hmm. And then you were like jazzed about it that night or the next day or something, and wrote 3 more verses just, really quick, which I don't know how normal that is for you, but that was really fun and cool. And you sent me those verses, and I was like way excited. I think I might have tweaked, 5% of what you sent me. But one of those lyrics in the last verse is just about, standing before the Lord, kind of your common hymn structure, the last verse being kind of when I get to heaven. And you said, it says, when I breathe my final breath, I'll have no need to fear that rest. This hope will guide me into death, which is just awesome. And so I think the record is going to be called "This Hope Will Guide Me," because I've just had an interesting year. My dad passed away. Actually, it was a year yesterday.
Is that right? Oh.
Yeah. And so just the hope that I have in the Lord has been, not to be at all cliche about it, just has been huge for me this year. This idea of this hope will guide me into death. Knowing that my Lord, that my dad is with the Lord. And so what a powerful way for me to shape and sort of structure the whole record. And what a general thing, that I think we all believe. And you getting a little bit choked up over there, Todd, about this? Is this kind of moving you a little bit? Sorry.
Not that I know of.
All right. Okay. Good. All right. So anyway, thanks for writing a great lyric.
The thing that'll choke me up, I'm sure, is when the royalty checks start coming in.
Oh, those. I think what would be great is if there was so much money that it could choke you, just like chokeable. I can't even take this in. It's so much money, I can't even receive it. Thanks for ruining my moment talking about my father's passing and how much it was meaningful to me with your money loving. You're a filthy lucre, as they would have said in the.
Gosh.
Anyway,
Sorry.
no, it was going to happen. One of us was going to go somewhere bad. Anyway, so "This Hope Will Guide Me" is the tentative title for the record.
Well, if you decide not to use it from one of my lyrics,
I'll just pick one of your other great lyrics.
I won't be that mad. In other words,
I'm gonna call it "Good Songs for Singing." better songs for singing. Wink.
Yeah.
And the cover will be me holding your album and going, or maybe lighting a match, maybe lighting a lighter underneath it.
Yeah.
So that'd be good. Yeah, man. So listen, thank you for doing this. And I'm gonna tell all my dozens of fans to come watch.
Have you I'll end with this, and so it'll be on the internet. So it's kind of like the other deal. We'll have to do it. Did you ever finish Pilgrim Stranger?
I didn't, and I would like to. Pilgrim Stranger is the song that Todd and I worked on, I don't know, a year ago, and it just is one of the struggles I've had, and I know you agree with this because this is how Hallelujah for the Cross came together. Is hymns, a lot of them don't have choruses, and so you write them with verses in mind a lot of the time, and then you end up with either with no chorus or with a chorus that kind of feels like the least good part of the song, right? And Hallelujah for the Cross, I feel like at first had a potential to be there, and then we just kept chipping away at it, but yeah, Pilgrim Stranger is a song that we worked on, and I think
it's great. It's a great song if we could just finish it.
Yeah, and I mean, that title is somewhere between really interesting and really odd. So it'll come together. You know this thing, but I mean, songs can sit around for so long. And let me just say this one final thing about just people. You mentioned this earlier, kind of what I was new on the record. One of the things that's new is that there's 12 songs, and I didn't write a single one by myself. That's never happened. I've always written the majority of songs on a record by myself. So it's been really humbling. You're on that, and what's cool about that is that it's not like a bunch of Nashville songwriters. There's a handful of guys that are on the record co-writing that are paid songwriters, for a professional publisher or whatever. But you've got a couple of cuts on the record. Jamie Bryant, worship leader here in College Station, has a couple of cuts on the record. Wes Taylor, young worship leader here locally, has a cut on the record. Michael Bleeker, who though he's at a big church, is not any kind of famous person, he's on the record. I'm forgetting some people, but it's just loaded with songwriters that I can't wait for the world to hear, whatever world hears it, world to hear these songs that compete just fine up against songs that are also on the record. They're written by Nashville, guys, and so that's really, really cool, and I appreciate. And I want to say, just real quick, as if this is my Oscar speech, that John Mayer, who produced your record, is tracked the bass and drums, and is going to do some of the mixing on the record, and he'll probably play a little bit. He wrote a couple. That's the other person, John Mayer. He's got 2 cuts on the record, and then just that so far, Dustin Ragland, who played drums on your record, played drums on mine, and just did an amazing job. I mean, you're not surprised because he's just awesome. And then Brandon Rosas, bass player, who played for me when I did Brett and Emily Mills' record. I produced that record, and he played on that, and he's playing bass, did an amazing job. So yeah, there's so many. I can't say enough that this situation, I'm having to admit how small a part of it I am, and that's
good though.
It is good. The Body of Christ thing is well, I've told people a lot that every collaborative situation ought to feel like this. It ought to feel equal parts. Oh my gosh, I'm really good at this one thing. I'm better than that person is at this one thing. And oh my gosh, I'm without this other person, I would have never done this. They're so much better at this than I am. It ought to have equal parts humility and encouragement, and that's what true collaboration. Because you don't want to be in that situation where, oh my gosh, I did all the work and this person just sort of sucked the life out of it. Or the other situation, which is I just sat here and played on my phone while they wrote a brilliant song, and I'm going to get some credit for it.
All right, last 2 things. When are you hoping the record to be actually done, completed, and out? I mean, I know it's hard to know.
Right, and I'm hesitant to give it a release date because then I'll either set it so far back that I finish too soon. I think I'll be done with my work in about 2 weeks, God willing, and then I think it'll be at mix stage by the end of this month, and I think it'll be out sometime in the month of June, probably very, very late in the month of June.
Cool.
And I'll, of course, know a lot more than that in about 3 weeks. But that's my goal would be, July 1st would be absolutely a deadline in my mind for. And I'll say this: I will likely release it digitally first, just because you and I both know this, but it just sells faster, and you have pure profit instead of having to print out a bunch of copies of things. So.
Second thing, I can't believe I've just now noticed this about you after knowing you for many, many years. So I'm going to say this, and
the hair plugs. Is it the hair plugs? Yeah, I've had a lot of work done. Most of what you see here is plastic or some alloy, some There's a lot of experimental science here. The FDA is not approved.
Well, I will say you do have a very beautiful, wonderful wife, so I know you have to keep up.
I do.
Something to. Yeah. No, I've never noticed that you favor Michael Cera.
Michael Cera.
Do you
like my genius humor? I get a lot of Brad Pitt. I get a lot of Michael J. Fox.
You've never heard Michael Cera though? Nobody's ever said that?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You're like an older, more sad.
More sad.
Because he plays
I don't feel like you're complimenting me. I feel like this has turned into some sort of you're angry with me that I didn't do all of our songs on my record instead of just 2. Right. You're angry with me. Yeah. So.
All right, dude. Thank you very much.
That's how we're going to end it, with an older, sadder, sort of emo kid. Yeah.
Everybody loves Michael Cera, though.
Everybody loves Michael Cera. That is true. Isn't that the name of his new show? Everybody loves Michael Cera. I do love him. him.
Are you an Arrested Development guy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Seems like it'd be right up your alley.
I've made a huge mistake. Check out Banner, Michael. All right. I won't do too much of that.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. RossKingMusic.com. You can follow him on Twitter at RossKingMusic, or on Facebook, I think he's just as Ross King.
Yeah, LinkedIn, MySpace. Apparently Google Plus is a thing. Thank you, Plus, for hosting this.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.